They made an interesting statement as well, Dr Glenn Kolomeitz, about it comes at a heavy cost mentally, physically and spiritually. And you've certainly just recently been in Ukraine. Tell us about your experience there.
Yeah, Janie, I was staying with and indeed working with members of a Ukrainian Foreign Legion team, a number of whom are Australian or former Australian military or former US military, some Swedes and others, and an Israeli, in fact, who went home clearly to fight back for Israel now. But look, these guys are all veterans of conflicts involving their various nations, and they all have their flags around the team houses that we operate out of, that we live in. And so they're involved in helping another country in another conflict right now, which has global implications, and they're fully aware of that, which I think is part of the reason why they're there. But but they certainly they commemorated Anzac Day, the Australians and New Zealanders in the Legion, and they'll certainly be reflecting on today.
And other people reflecting, of course, Australians who have family in the IDF who are fighting in the conflict now.
Yeah, that's right, Janie. That's a really good point, and I think this brings us to another parallel issue. Is Remembrance Day was previously called Armistice Day, and I have to say I suspect there will be no armistice between Israel and Hamas until the hostages, the Israeli hostages, are released, and until the threat posed to Israelis and Palestinian people alike by Hamas is removed. So I know for a fact that Australians whose relatives are serving with the IDF would have that front and centre in their minds whilst thinking about their family members fighting for Israel in that horrendous conflict.
And what are your thoughts on the moment that we are reporting today, Glenn, that explosions have been reported near several hospitals in Gaza and thousands of Palestinians fleeing on foot from the north of the territory to the south, and Israel claiming it's paused its military operation for 7 hours. We're seeing those little pauses. What do you think about that situation?
Look, these pauses are good. I had some reservation about Israel having a ceasefire, which would have strategic and tactical implications in terms of Hamas being able to regroup and reposition. But certainly these sorts of pauses are allowing, or are intended to allow, civilians to get away from these target zones, and it's a measure that Israel is taking to take every precaution to avoid civilian casualties whilst they're engaging in this military operation. So whilst they're achieving their military objectives. Having said that, Israel opened up humanitarian corridors previously, and Hamas exploited those corridors to then attack Israeli forces. So, there's a lot of criticism aimed at Israel right now, Janie, but Hamas have got a lot to answer for in this conflict. They are exposing civilians to risk by the nature of their operations and by exploiting these humanitarian efforts. And indeed, Karim Khan, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, stated just that today in a public statement.
All right, we do have to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for your time and expertise, for your service as well. You're a military lawyer, defence academic, PhD in war crimes, and tell our viewers where you have served and what it meant to you.
Janie, East Timor and Afghanistan, and both were very different operations, but both were necessary operations at the time for Australia to be involved in. Certainly East Timor. Look, while you're doing your job, you're doing your job essentially on the ground. I think you have cause to reflect once you leave, and you have a look at our casualties from Afghanistan, and we reflect on the families, I think, who are left behind. We've done our bit overseas, Australia, and I guess the reflection now is to avoid that sort of situation in the future.